It is going to be an odd one this weekend for the Corales Puntacana because, of course, this is a separate field event with the WGC match play going on this week, which means a lot of the PGA's biggest names not in the field for the Corales Puntacana, but there is still DFS to be played, which means there is still money to be won. So we're here to break things down from a DFS perspective and get you set for the Corales Puntacana this week over on FanDuel. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, we got a weird field this week. How you doing today?
You know, I was researching this field yesterday, and I kind of came to the conclusion that I like it.
Yeah.
Because it requires more research than your usual course or your usual event. And honestly, we're going to talk about some names we haven't talked about in years. We're going to talk about some names probably for the first time. But, you know, usually when we get this opposite field event, I'm a little bit underwhelmed for my research. But then by the time the show comes around,
you talk yourself
I feel like, hey, man, I'm starting to see some value on some names. And, you know, it's maybe not as tight as we typically get. So I think there's an advantage this week. And like you said, there's still money to be won.
Yeah, it's not as tight. And the odds that like the players on whom it is not as tight get steamed up from a popularity perspective are lower because a lot of these dudes are probably not household names. So it's harder to get.
There's not a single household name.
Johnny Vegas is
no.
like
Johnny Vegas ain't making the pip.
In this house, we respect Johnny Vegas.
Yes.
And
on this niche DFS FanDuel golf podcast.
Crown him.
Our households are not indicative.
I'm sorry. That was rude of me. I should have said 2022 Corales Puntacana champion Johnny Vegas. I should have, said it with the proper title. So apologies, Johnny. We'll work on that going forward. We'll strive to get better throughout the podcast today. We're going to break down who in this field we should turn to for DFS, who could be some surprise names, who you can like, and who may have those pricing inefficiencies in just a bit. But first, with the men's Sweet 16 coming up, you've got one last chance to win a share of $70,000 in DFS site credit. Introducing the GMC Mountain Climber Series, a completely free-to-play brand new contest series that gives you a chance to win big throughout the first 3 rounds of the men's big dance. Here's how it works. Just correctly select the winners of each matchup listed for the Sweet 16. The more selections you answer correctly, the higher you'll move up the mountain. Using GMC's custom mountain climber leaderboard, you'll be able to see where you stack up against the competition in real time every day. If you get every answer correct, you'll reach the summit and win your share of $20,000 in DFS site credit each round. As an added bonus, 100 lucky fans who entered any of the contests win a share of the $10,000 bonus DFS site credit prize. The first games will be underway on Thursday for this week's Head of FanDuel. Reserve your spot in the GMC Mountain Climber Series. Head to www.gmc.com. Not sure why I said the www. Anyway, gmc.com/future-vehicles/2022-Sierra to reserve your new GMC Sierra now at participating dealers. Reservation does not guarantee delivery within a certain period of time. Let's dive in now to the Corales Puntacana Championship and take a look at Corales Golf Club. That is 7,670 yards in a par 72. It's a long pupper there. It hosted 2 events during the most recent PGA Tour season. There was one in September and then one in March as well. So typically it's a March one, got moved because of COVID. They did play in September of last year as well. There are 120 golfers in the field. The top 65 plus ties will make the cut after the first 2 rounds. Now, Brandon, no shot link at Corales Golf Club, but we have some data here looking at past events. What stands out to you in terms of what matters at Corales Golf Club?
Yeah, one of the things that jumps out is the winning scores typically have been 18 under, 12 under for Joel Damon with some gustier wins last year. But other than that, it's taken 18 under to win this thing. So we're going to need some birdies, and we have anytime we get a birdie event, there's increased volatility. And I think that this week is the name of the game is going to be some volatility, whether you're digging into the match play or the Corales Puntacana. So embrace the chaos this week. But one thing that I've started to do is look at fairway acreage per yard for courses. That kind of gives me a general estimate of how wide courses are. This one's rating out at a 6.5, so it's pretty wide, which is why I think we get to see some emphasis on driving distance relative to driving accuracy here. It's one of the higher end fairway acre per yard numbers for me in my database. Data Golf shows an emphasis on driving distance as well. The past winners here kind of don't really fit that profile. Joel Damon, Hudson Swafford, Graham McDowell, Bryce Garnett. But we also don't have a lot of the longer hitters on tour in this field anyway. So, I think that's going to be one reason why we'll talk about Jonathan Vegas in detail this week. I think he's going to be the best play. I thought it was going to be Joel Damon, but I've warmed up to Jonathan Vegas as the play for this week. As far as my key stats go, then I'm opting for strokes gained off the tee due to the mix of guys who win or contend here who aren't necessarily long, as opposed to just driving distance. I'm looking at obviously strokes gained approach, notably greens and regulation rate out. Pretty hard to hit here. Again, that could speak to skill level as well. But each of the 12 golfers who finished T9 or better here last year were top 17 in greens regulation, which is almost always going to be the case anyway. But you can't go wrong this week if you need birdies to say, I need strokes gained off the tee, I need strokes gained approach, and I need a birdie or better rate.
Yeah, and I think going back to the driving stuff, I think the other reason to go with strokes gained off the tee versus just raw distance is that I'm kind of in search of good golfers this week. And so I'm valuing off the tee play in general because I want indicators of raw talent. I think is the way I want to view it. And that's why we'll be referenced, or at least I will, looking a lot at the Data Golf True Strokes Gained query for this week too, because a lot of these guys are playing different tours, competing against smaller fields. And I want to be able to account for that. Vegas doing well at the Valspar. I have no idea if he was at the Valspar, how he did, et cetera, et cetera. But him doing well there is different than doing well at the Puerto Rico Open. So I think for me, we talk about this a lot for majors. He finished 27th at the Valspar.
He did.
But we talk about this a lot at majors where you're hunting for the best overall golfers, because that's always going to matter more than course fit. I think that's true this week too, given the specific way this field breaks down.
So last week on Friday, I published a piece on numberFire about putting regression. And
very good piece, by the way.
And it made me realize that the way I run my simulations, which is based only on round by round scoring, adjusted for field strength and recency, I was like, you know what? I want to go back to a model that accounts for tee to green and putting splits. And then we ran right into this event, and I realized how the reason I got away from that is because it's very difficult to account for putting splits based on distance from guys without shot link data. Tee to green from various tours, we can account it for the DP World Tour, which if you don't know yet, that's what the European Tour is now called. Don't have that for the Corn Ferry Tour, but again, I use a full year of data, so a lot of that stuff's going to level off. If you use smaller samples, then it's going to be a little bit more problematic. But I found myself this week doing a similar thing you do. You're using Data Golf's query tool. I use my own adjusted numbers, but basically just a long-term who's the best golfer here.
Yeah.
Who are the better golfers, and just kind of go from there. And I think that you can't really go wrong. Because again, you're looking at weird samples, smaller samples from guys who don't always get to play on the PGA Tour. If you're looking just at PGA Tour stats, you're going to have some glaring weaknesses. You're going to miss some guys. So this is a perfect week where overall strokes gained, I think, just makes a lot of sense.
And like that's probably where we should skew in general. Like we talk about course fit a lot because it does matter, and like you do make tweaks based on that. But it's a tweak versus the key component. And I think that for this week, the key component is just who's good,
Yeah, and I mean, like last week we, for Copperhead, like talk about driving accuracy being a little bit more important, and then it came down to Sam Burns won again, JT was in the mix, like. It matters. You kind of tweak things a little bit.
Yeah, you roster the best golfer, which is why you roster Sam Burns. That's the key takeaway that I have here. That's all I can take away from that. Yeah. Okay, let's dive into past history here at Corales Golf Club. And again, they were here twice last year. So more recent course history than we typically get in terms of like the past year and a half, which is good. And one guy who has done well is Joel Damon. You mentioned you might be a Damon guy for this week, partly because of the course history, but also like Damon is a relevant guy we talk about a lot at other fields. So let's run through Damon and what he's done at Corales in the past.
Yeah, so Damon's salary is $11,800. That puts him second on FanDuel behind just Jonathan Vegas at $11,900. So we don't really have a runaway up in the 12,000 range, but I think for me, it comes down to Damon versus Vegas for the top play. But Damon, most recent winner here, has finished 13th, 12th, and then first, obviously, at Corales. And it's really hard to beat for any golfer at any setup. And better yet, Damon's just in good form, especially relative to this field. He was T6 at Pebble Beach, made the cut at the WM Phoenix Open and the Genesis, 33rd at the Players, 39th at Valspar, and really warming up to. I don't like citing finishing positions anyway because they can be really misleading, especially if they're fueled by putting. But usually, to finish well, you're doing more than literally just putting your way. You're not just putting it down the fairway or anything like that. But I'm warming up to like top 30s and top 45s being pretty decent, especially if you account for the field strength there. So I love those results for Damon. If you inject him into a field that is frankly about as bad as it gets for the PGA Tour. But over the past year as well, Damon is in the 97th percentile and adjusted a tee to green play, which again comes from my database, which adjusts for field strength and recency. He's not very long off the tee, but that hasn't mattered here. He's among the best form of anyone in this field. So I think that Damon's close to Vegas, but I think that I'm siding with Vegas. We'll probably talk more about Vegas just later on, but does Joel Damon tempt you enough to go away from Vegas?
Maybe not to go away from Vegas, but he could tempt me to the point where I go Vegas plus Damon and just go top heavy.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of separation once you get outside the top few guys.
And I think that like my inclination is either going with that route where it's super top heavy with Vegas and Damon, or Vegas plus balance, because I think that like the low 10,000 range is pretty good. I mean, relatively good. So I would say Damon will probably be part of like one of the ways I decide to build things. For a cash game, I don't know. I haven't tinkered enough there yet. I've been mostly looking at like tournament type stuff. But if I go Vegas Damon, that's 90.75 left. Doable. There are some 8,000 golfers who are viable. Some mid 8,000 guys who are viable. I think my preferred route though will be Vegas plus balance if I had to guess. But like, if it's a top heavy field, you want to live in the part that is heavy more often. So I would say most likely I go 50-50 in terms of like my approach of like going top heavy versus Vegas plus balanced.
I gotcha. Yeah. I mean, really the point here is that Damon is, can we call him the number 2 play of the week?
I think that it's Vegas tier 1, Damon tier 2, tier 3 is other people. Like, I think they're both in a tier of their own.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about Graham McDowell. McDowell is 10-7, so man, that's probably why we're leaning towards being top heavy here. McDowell, though, has been good at Corales Puntacana. He's been feast or famine, I guess, but the feasts have been very noteworthy in order of his appearances. McDowell has been cut, win, cut, fourth, with the fourth coming last spring. Hits fairways, gets to the green regulation with regularity, kind of does Graham McDowell stuff. So that's good. Upside's good. The form is not. He did have a 13th at the Arnold Palmer, fueled by good approach play. The approach has been okay. but he's been awful everywhere else. He has missed 7 of the past 9 cuts dating back to November. So, like, that's fine, but we're not getting a salary discount. And that's pretty rough. He's 10-7. Is that high enough for you to rule out McDowell for this week, despite the good course history? I don't know. So a high upside course history.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the case against a balanced approach, because when you dig into the 10,000 range, like you're getting guys with a lot of question marks.
There are guys I like down there, just not McDowell.
Yeah, well, sure. But you're getting someone like Graham McDowell at 10-7 because the field is what it is. So usually we're not recommending many golfers with a salary of like 8,000 flat, but I think there may be multiple down there who I would consider. It's just not necessarily the right. I'm not playing Graham McDowell. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, me neither. I think there are guys down here I like, just not him specifically.
He's going to
win. Let's move.
Now.
Yeah. Let's move to your second guy on the list. That's Kelly Craft at $7,800. And what?
We're talking about Kelly Craft. It's funny.
Why?
We got a WGC event this week. We're talking about Kelly Craft.
Got to work with what you got, man. We are working with the tools that are brought to us. Kelly Craft is $7,800. I said there are some guys around 8,000 who I like. Talk me to Craft. Is Craft one of those guys? Okay.
So last week we talked about Charles Schwartzel at a minimum salary in the course history section. We said like maybe, but overall we were not necessarily positive with our interest in Charles Schwartzel. He missed the cut because the form was bad, and it was a good reminder of golfers who have good course history but who are in terrible form. Might not be golfing the same way they did 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. That's something that we always caution against. Kelly Craft, though, of course, the Corales data is more recent than that. But unless we talked about just the winners at this event, we kind of had to talk about Kelly Craft as someone who has good form here. He's finished 3rd, 5th, 14th, then did miss the cut last year at Corales. But his recent stats are not good. They're all pretty bad. Tee to green, he's been pretty good with the putter, but in weaker fields though. And here's kind of the thing: for a field like this, if you look at someone's PGA Tour log and they're missing cuts at, tougher tracks, but then you see a T50 at the Puerto Rico Open. This field is probably just barely better than the Puerto Rico Open's field, and if you see guys making cut, and he was 28th at Pebble Beach. That's not the strongest field necessarily. So like, you got to adjust. The salary is $7,800. He's figured it out. Corales, I'm not getting there, but if we're trying to go with Vegas and Damon, do you see anything with Kelly Craft to draw you in?
No, I see some guys in your player picks who I'd much rather use in the low 8,000 range. I think that they are far more attractive than Craft. They have a better appeal than him. I think that like what you're saying about looking at golfers who have done well in like the equivalent fields is fine. And like, again, like, Craft has had some like high upside finishes, but I'd rather bank on it with some other guys personally. Just, it's where I'm leaning there. Let's talk about Hudson Swafford. He actually won this event last year, the September edition. He finished 6th in the spring, which seems pretty noteworthy. He gained 1.1 greens in regulation per round above the field across those 2 events. Drove the ball pretty well too. The form is not great for Swafford. He has missed 3 straight cuts. He was 60th at the Phoenix Open, missed the cut the week before that too, but that all came after a win at the American Express. So Swafford win in September of 2020, win at the American Express this past fall. He's not playing well, but most of the people in the field aren't either. So the longer term stats in Swafford aren't bad. Does he do anything for you here at $9,400?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite plays this week.
I agree.
Yeah. Again, like you can't look at like Arnold Palmer and the players and seeing missed cuts and say, well, he's in bad form for this field, because it's a completely different ball game that we're talking about here. Swafford is, to me, the top play in the 9,000 range. there is no such thing as safety this week. Probably even with Vegas. I've researched this in the past. The weaker field strengths get, the less viable the high salaried golfers are, because someone has to be salaried up toward 12,000 just to make, DFS work. But Jonathan Vegas, as much as we like him, it's not the same as having Justin Thomas to pick.
Let's proceed with caution here. Don't say anything you're gonna regret.
He's not Sam Burns. He's not JT. He's not John Rahm. So there's no guarantee.
Are we sure he's not John Rahm?
There's no guarantee Vegas and Damon. No, I thought you were being serious, honestly. So, we have to embrace more risk with every single golfer at salary than we typically are. So I'm fine with Swafford. I'll talk more about him later.
Yeah, I think so too. And the reason that I think that he's pretty interesting is I like some guys in the 9,000 range. I'm okay with some of them, but most of them don't have Swafford has some distance. He has some giddy up off the tee. The guys I like in the 9,000 range are typically guys who gain without being long, whereas Swafford, he actually has a little bit of distance too. So I think that Swafford is pretty good too. So $9,400 has some upside, has done well here previously. I like it.
One other thing I'll say, this was a Korn Ferry Tour event, or it was then a web.com event, but Nate Lashley won and Dominic Bazzelli won here as well. I literally cannot find anything about Dominic Bazzelli recently. He's in the field. I think he's 500 to 1 to win. I don't know that, but Nate Lashley would have been someone I talked about here, but I don't want to talk about everyone at a high salary. So yeah,
I think that makes sense too. Okay, let's dive into some current form here and talk about golfers who have interesting or noteworthy form in some way or another. We're starting off with Rasmus Højgaard, both the Højgaards in the field for this week. That's we got that storyline. I think that might be the big storyline of the week. Nikolai and Rasmus both here. You're talking about Rasmus. He is 10-5. What are you seeing with him right now?
I'm talking about a little bit of both, K-Dog.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't read ahead.
No, I mean, look, they're twins. They just turned 21 last month, but they were kind of all the rage on the DP World Tour. I just want to call it the European Tour, but
DP World Tour is also an objectively funny name.
They had some wins on the tour across the pond. But Rasmus, his salary is $10,500 this week. Nikolai's at $10,100. Of the two, you could more easily argue that Rasmus is in better form. He's finished 20th, 47th, 42nd, and 30th again on the DP World Tour for him, with poor putting in 3 straight. Nikolai's 2022 is made up of 5 missed cuts, but a win. 2 missed cuts coming on the PGA Tour, but neither of these guys have big samples on the PGA Tour, so that's something I want to caution against. But overall, his profile is one that kind of says he'll have positive tee to green. Long term, Nikolai has the better form and is a lower salary, so I'm more interested there. But basically, if there's a storyline of a narrative base, it's probably can the Højgaards win on the PGA Tour in a weaker field? Again, they're only 21, they're kind of all the rage. So I think that this is a perfect example of you got to be really into golf to be listening to this show this week and getting geared up for the Corales. So you probably know about the Højgaards if that's the case. If you don't, and you're just kind of listening because you want to, throw in some lineups, I think the Højgaards should be someone you look at a little bit deeper. I think both are fine, but I'm going to prefer Nikolai at 10,100. Any interest for you? Anything you're seeing from them?
I wanted to ask, how much of your preference towards Nikolai is the launch in it? I know that they're twins, in theory they should be pretty similar, but it seems like Nikolai has more juice in terms of distance.
It's more long-term form.
Okay. So you like the long-term form from Nikolai more so than with Rasmus. You also get a salary discount because Nikolai is 10-1 versus Rasmus is 10-5. If you go to Data Golf's True Strokes Gained, again, you can reference 16,000 times. Nikolai actually grades out better there over the past 6 months as well. So I don't think Rasmus is a bad option at 10.5. But like we were talking about the 10,000 range before. I think that the reason you talk about that is in the low 10,000 range, you have Nikolai Højgaard, you have Alex Smalley, you have Patrick Rogers. I think that Brian Stewart's not like he's not long, but like Stewart's a guy who could do well in this field as well. So Aaron Rye, $9,900. I think this is a pretty good range. I'm willing to include Nikolai in that as well as kind of like a higher upside guy in that range. I think if I'm looking for like all around play, aka for a cash game option, I think I'd lean towards Smalley or Rogers there. But for tournaments, I think the Højgaard would grade out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean they're both really long off the tee, so yeah. I just think that if I'm going balanced, I'm going to try to get. I would even consider not playing Vegas because again, I think he's the best play this week, but he's not a lock by any means. So I could probably see myself playing both Højgaards, Smalley, and just hugging the 10,000 range. I think that could be interesting. I don't know if that'll be my default, but it's either going to be strictly Vegas and Damon plus all the value, or just building around the 10,000 range. I don't really think it's going to be just Vegas and some balance there.
I think it will be for me. I think that is pretty attractive, honestly, and I feel pretty good with it. Now, we're talking about going Vegas and Damon. We are not including Sahith Theegala in that discussion, despite the fact he is number 3 in the betting odds as of right now. So let's talk about him. He's volatile, but volatility when it comes to the upside is good, and that seems to be the case with Theegala. And I think that is more than you get for most guys in this field right now. Theegala's events from the Phoenix Open are 3rd, 48th, cut 7th. The 2 missed cuts were not entirely driven by putting, but it was a pretty big factor in those missed cuts. Even with the bad putting weeks, Theegala has pretty well-rounded profile. He ranks 50th or better in strokes gained off the tee, approach, birdies or better gain, and putting, according to Fantasy National. He's 11-4. So are you buying the surge at Theegala enough to use him at that number? Or do you think the gap between him and Damon in Vegas is larger than what the salaries would indicate you do believe?
I think it's larger for sure. Just in terms of my long-term form, I much prefer. Actually, let me just sort this here. I guess he's on par with Damon, but Vegas is out ahead. I will note again, and I'll be citing this a little bit more in the future. But again, the putting regression data that I use now has Theegala overperforming pretty substantially recently, so that's one thing I'd be worried about. And that's including not necessarily having lights out putting super recently. So we might be seeing that start to tail off. So that's never going to be the only reason that I don't like someone, but accounting for that compared to just being able to play Joel Damon at a course where he's played well, I'll go Damon over Theegala.
Okay.
If you don't, I would take a head-to-head on that.
I would not. Nope. Okay. I like Damon more. So I'm very much on board there. And I think that there is a gap. Like I said, I think it's Vegas tier 1, Damon tier 2. Everyone else is fighting in tier 3. Literally everyone else. Okay, let's move on to Haotong Li. $9,100. I think under salary based on recent performance. He is $9,100. He's had some sparks, I guess, at times across actual PGA Tour events. So what do you see with him recently?
Yeah, I mean, I like Haotong Li. He was in the mix in the 2017 Open Championship. He finished 3rd. I assumed he was older, but I think he's like 25 or 26 still. I'll look that up. But
I got it.
He was yeah. So 5 years ago, he was contending at the Open Championship. But he has two top 45s at the Masters. So he made cuts there, which is impressive. He has a top 20 each at the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship as well. He held the 36-hole lead at the 2020 PGA. Overall, he's made 9 of 13 cuts in majors. He's got 3 top 25s at majors. I know this is not a major. This is not what we're talking about. But like, if we see any spark from Haotong Li, we should probably think that he can do some damage in a field like this. And in 2022, he has just 5 events, but He's made 4 or 5 cuts, with all 4 being top 33s. He has 2 top 12 finishes as well. I'm not saying he's my favorite value play, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's like in contention here, because I'm starting to see something again from him. So did he jump off the page for you at all in your research? And if not, does he appeal to you now?
Yeah, I think it just depends on how much you trust like the recent stuff, because he had a stretch like over the summer last year where things were really bad, kind of like bottomed out. And it's a question of, do you trust that 5-event sample to say, okay, he is leveled off from there? And like, maybe I don't trust it fully, but like, do I trust it enough in this field for $9,100? Sure. Yeah, I think that that's fully valid. He is a guy who does have at least some distance. He can putt well at times. He's got some off the tee stuff as well. So I think that if it were like a tougher field, I might not be as inclined to buy into what he's done, but it's not. So yeah, I think that it's fully fine to buy into him here, $9,100. And I would say again, like I'm looking at a cash gamey type roster, even if I go with the Vegas plus balanced approach, I will need guys in the low 9,000 or the 8,000 rate at some point, and I wouldn't be shocked if he winds up being the guy I use there.
Yeah, over the past 6 months, he's 11th in Data Golf's true strokes gained. That's for him 9 events. That's pretty decent.
Yeah.
And again, younger guy, so you can buy into some turnarounds a little bit more. And I would love to see Hal Tongley in contention at some majors.
I think that'd be fun. I think that'd be a lot
done
of
it
fun.
before.
Yeah. Again, 26. That's not too bad. Okay, so you talked about Kelly Craft doing well in lesser field events, measuring up well there. One guy we've seen do that before as well is Emiliano Grillo. He has feasted in fields like this previously. Good course history at Corales specifically, but the form ain't great for our boy Emiliano. He was 21st in the Genesis. That was the only made cut for Grillo in his past 5 events, and it's just one of 2 made cuts in his past 9 events. Only 2 of those were legit implosions where he just like torched it and like absolutely did not come close to making the cut, but they were also his most recent 2 events at the Valspar and the Players. The off the tee play has still been good, but the approach has slipped. And if we're getting Grillo without the good approach play, we're not really getting Grillo. That's not what we're signing up for. So I saw his name, looked into it, had interest. Kind of out, I think. Is that an overreaction? What about you?
At the salary, I think that he would rank behind Nikolai Højgaard, Aaron
Rye.
I see it. It's one of those ones that you get it wrong first, then you correct it, but then you never know which one you thought it was first because you thought it could have been either or.
So there was a guy when I did baseball in Wisconsin over the summers in like college. His name was Rich Prigatano. Couldn't say his name. It's not a tough name. I couldn't say it. Rye is an objectively easy name. It's just like it's the mental block.
It's the way it's spelled.
I had to like sit there before games like a half an hour saying Prigatano over and over and over again because I just couldn't say his freaking name. Also, Rich, if you're listening, hello. You never met me, but your name messed me up mentally for a very long time.
So I'm gonna go Aaron Rye, Nikolai Højgaard over Grillo, and I would rather just eat some salary and go Grayson Sigg or Hudson Swafford as well.
Yes,
in that range.
I just think that like I'm
okay. If you get Grillo without irons, you don't want
it's not
to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's not him.
But it's not only that, but the only way Grillo is relevant is because he's striping his irons so well that the putting he can't hurt himself with the putting. So if the irons are there, he's still got to putt, and he's got to putt from farther away, which is not ideal. Although I guess he's actually one of the better golfers or better putters from 15 plus feet, but he's also really bad within 15 feet, and that's not a good sign.
It ain't great, man. Okay, so let's move on to what the bookmakers are saying for this week. We got Johnny Vegas as the favorite over at FanDuel Sportsbook. He is 16-1, followed by Joel Damon at 18-1. Sahith Theegala is 22-1. Then there's a big dip down to a bunch of dudes, a gaggle of guys who are 29-1. We've got Mark Hubbard, Nate Lashley, you mentioned before, Matthias Schwab, and Adam Svensson. They're all 29-1. Peter Uline, Doc Redman, Nikolai Højgaard, Alex Smalley, Brian Stewart, Bryce Garnett, Kramer Hickok. Oh my gosh. Everyone 33-1. Thomas Dietrich and Patrick Rogers are all 33-1. Basically, FanDuel said, you figure it out. We're going to do price exploration by putting everyone at the same price. You tell us who is too long by betting them. We'll go from there. That's where we're at. So I want to talk about Vegas here because we talked around him a lot, but he's the betting favorite, but he's 16-1. That's kind of long for a favorite. I know it's a pretty volatile field. I know he's not like Justin Thomas, as you mentioned. We can disagree on that. But anyway,
I'm gonna require JT versus every time you give me an outlandish take, I'm gonna just pencil in on our head-to-head bet sheet a head-to-head whenever these guys are in the same field. Next time Vegas is playing with JT, I'm getting JT in that side.
Vegas or Brooks in like a non-money field. If Brooks were here, would Brooks even like bother using multiple clubs? Would he just like use like an iron for every shot, even his putts? Like if he were in this field?
I think Brooks could be in contention for the Masters, which is not a bold take, but I'm kind of keeping my eye on him. So I'm not going to speak ill of Brooks here.
Well, pre-offer a Vegas versus Brooks bet for whatever they're in the field together next. Just kidding. Not doing that. Anyway, I think that Vegas to me is someone I want to be overweight on in tournaments. I will use him in our head-to-head as well. Where do you settle in on him?
Yeah, so my numbers have him closer to 12-1 than 16-1. So I see some value there for an outright, which I almost never see on the favorite.
Dibs.
Well, we can both pick them. So, but yeah, I think that he is shaping up to be the best play from a process standpoint. We'll both talk about him later on. Was there another question?
Tournaments. What do you do?
You usually throw like 7 at me. So,
what do you do with him in tournaments? How heavy?
I don't think he's gonna be that chalky. So, I'd say probably 50% would get me where I'm going.
I might do 80 and see if it kills me. It kills me just because, like, I might be. A, I'm not going to play as much this week as usual. But B, I'm just like, I think I might just say if it bites me, it bites me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like if Vegas does win, you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that.
Yeah,
it's always a balance you have to find with, especially with PGA, because it's super high volatility, but you don't want to have Vegas win and play them in 20% of your lineups.
Yeah,
because the odds that you're going to hit on the other 5 in that line and that smaller number of lineups is not ideal. So I think this week, maybe we could load up on Vegas if that's the route we're going.
Yeah, I think that for me, I've become a lot more comfortable recently of being okay with losing everything. Like whether it's NASCAR, like playoff NFL stuff, I've just become more comfortable with like I'm okay if I get nothing back this whole week.
If you're playing GPPs in order to like
grind out a small profit.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Let's
play double ups,
focus here.
Play head to heads. Play a lot of like whatever for you a low dollar head to head is. Build a good, solid lineup or mix up some lineups if you really want. Play some head to heads, and then if that sort of can offset what you enter into GPPs, if this is something you're struggling with. That's something that you could definitely explore. Yeah,
and I think just being like, as long as you can, like, play within your means. So the fact that if you lose it all, it's fine. Like, just do that first of all from a bankroll management perspective, but be okay with that. Okay, which golfers' odds have shifted most notably since things opened?
There's a ton. Sahith Theegala 26-22 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Matthias Schwab 31-29. A cluster. From 40-33 includes Brian.
We're going with gaggle, not a cluster.
I'm gonna say cluster.
I disagree.
Brian Stewart, Patrick Rogers, Nikolai Højgaard, and Alex Smalley. Nick Taylor 50-41. Wyndham Clark 65-50. Emphasizing his name there. Hayden Buckley 80-60. Seth Reeves 100-60, and then another cluster from 100-80 includes. The notorious spreadsheet ruiner Sean O'Hare Roger Sloan, Trey Mullinax, Brandon Hagee, and Vincent Whaley.
Vincent Whaley also.
Whaley's also on that list, yeah.
Yeah, but like he's easy to figure out. O'Hare's like, I don't know,
well,
put the thing in there. I put the
with
thing
Vincent,
in there.
With Whaley, it's either Vince or Vincent. With O'Hare, sometimes it includes the
God's
apostrophe.
comma.
Sometimes
it's God's comma.
Sometimes it's not there. Sometimes it's a space between the O and the H.
Yeah.
So
How Tom Lee also a spreadsheet ruiner.
Yeah,
sneaky one. But anyway, I think that with all the 10,000 guys shortened, so Smalley's there, Højgaard's there, Rogers, Stewart, all those guys are between 10 and 10-3. Preference for you between them?
Between the
Stewart, Rogers, Højgaard, and Smalley. I agree. Okay, which lower salary golfers have not stand out to you?
Wyndham Clark.
Again?
Emphasizing his name here. 50-1. John Huh, also 50-1. Cluster of 60-1 includes Hayden Buckley, Victor Perez, Chase Seifert, Seth Reeves. 65-1 cluster includes Adam Schenk, Callum Tarrant, Vaughn Taylor, Ryan Armour, Cameron Percy, and then 70-1 we got Hank Lebioda and Ben Coles.
So Wyndham Clark, I know you'll talk about him later, but just in case people tail off before we get to them, what draws you towards him? Why is he an emphasis for you?
Long off the tee. He's the kind of guy you just monitor and be like, when can he just like nuke it? And that's what he does. But also he is, and I'll just blow this he is the best golfer in the sub 9,000 range pretty easily in my long-term adjusted strokes gain numbers. He's at a 0.20 above the baseline worldwide baseline golfer over the past year with my adjustments. Only one golfer other than Clark is better than a negative 0.35 below 9,000. And in fact, Clark is second among all golfers below 10,000 in long-term form.
And he is $8,800. So more on Wyndham Clark coming later on. But first, let's talk about some weather for this week. You mentioned last year that the winning score for Joel Damon was lower at 12 under. That could be in play again this week because there's going to be wind on Thursday and Friday. It's going to be 15-mile-per-hour winds Thursday and Friday throughout the day. The wind speeds may come down a bit during the day on Friday. So that could incentivize using or bumping up golfers with an earlier tee time Thursday. I don't think it's enough where you want to like go all out in that because it's like a 3-mile-per-hour difference, but like, hey, that still matters. So not a thing where you're stacking tee times. There could be some rain too, so we can check back on the weather there as well, but not a stacking tee time situation, but maybe a slight edge, and wind will matter for sure for this week. Let's dive into our player picks here for the Corales Puntacana Championship, starting off at the top range. Brandon, who stands out to you in the stud tier on FanDuel for this week?
Should I keep it with
yes.
we have the same two? Okay.
Yes. Okay. I'm not making you talk about people you don't like.
Well, no, it's people I like, but a little bit less.
No.
And I didn't know if I should give options. As an actor, you always got to give options.
What?
You know the reference.
No, I don't.
You do.
No, I don't.
You do.
No, I don't.
It's from Oh Hello.
I've seen that once. How would I know that reference?
Because you've seen it once. That's why.
That was a long time ago.
Jonathan Vegas rating.
It was during work, and I would never disregard work.
You watch that during work?
I think so.
You're the worst person.
I agree.
Jonathan Vegas, not the worst person. In fact, probably the best person to play in your FanDuel lineups this week. Pretty easily the best long-term adjusted golfer in my database over the past year. He is the best off the tee, 94th percentile in iron play as well, 99th percentile in distance gained. It's just a good recipe for him to keep playing well, especially at Corales, where he has 2 top 26 finishes.
Yeah. Vegas got that distance, got that approach, makes some birdies, checks every box. And like the birdie number is big for me because it accounts for like his not being good putter. Ranked second in the field in birdies or better game the past 50 rounds. He was 18th here last spring. So if the weather does get unruly, he's played in that before. So I think that Vegas, the clear top cut guy for this week. And again, I think lock for cash games for me, and a guy I will be heavy on for tournaments as well. Who else do you like in this upper range on FanDuel?
Alex Smalley, but you talk about him first because we both have the same top 2 here.
Yeah, so I think we could have put him in the mid-range if we wanted, but I think overall he's someone I just want to be in on here at 10-3. Smalley, well-balanced, mediocre putter, but still gets birdies thanks to pretty strong off the tee play. That quality driving is because he's both long and accurate, which should play well this week. The approach did let him down in a missed cut at the Valspar last week, but Smalley, not bad there. I think there's enough here for me to feel good about him, whether it's part of a balanced approach with Vegas plus balance, or maybe it's like a Vegas plus something else plus Smalley is the third ranked guy. I think both those are viable for me. What put you on Smalley?
Long off the tee, which is stabilized quickly. I mean, he's got 50 plus rounds on the PGA Tour, but still one of those things that is you kind of know it early on. Good off the tee numbers overall. Field average basically in terms of irons and wedges, and overall 4th in my long-term adjusted strokes gain data among the field, but the salary does not reflect that.
Okay, so let's shift down to the mid-range. Who do you like down there?
Hudson Swafford, 9,400. The Swafficer, former winner here. And he's kind of
that an official nickname.
Is that an official nickname?
Like
it was in a commercial.
Lists like their nicknames. That's bad.
It was in a commercial for
I hate it.
It's Skechers bad. Or something, maybe.
That's way worse.
I don't.
It's already bad. It just got way worse.
I'll look it up, but I remember seeing that commercial plenty. He's long off the tee relative to the field. One of 9 golfers in this field to be in the 80th percentile in adjusted off the tee and adjusted approach, both ball striking numbers. 1 of 9, salary of 9,400. I'll take that.
Yeah, I think that Swafford makes a lot of sense. My current build for cash games does not have me in that range, but I think that I'd be okay with Swafford.
Is it too balanced? It's 9,400.
I'm not telling you what my lineup is. No, I'm not doing that.
Give me just 5 of the 6, and I'll go from there.
No, I'm not doing that. But I would be receptive to him. Like, if I were to reconfigure, if I were to shift some guys around, I'd be okay with Swafford for that format. I think that for tournaments, he works out well too. My first mid-salary guy is Patrick Rogers. I tend to, so like kind of like an upper tier play, but also it's our podcast, our rules, so deal with it. He's similar to Smalley. I think that they both grade out well this week. Rogers not as accurate as Smalley, but he can go long. I do like that for this week. He's also a better approach player. He has gained there in 4 of his past 5 events. Rogers, good on the greens too. So the hope is that the course helps erase some of his issues with accuracy and lets the rest of what he does shine through. So I think that for me, a start of Vegas plus Smalley plus Rogers, pretty enticing. Let me do it for this week. What's your read on Patrick Rogers at 10-2?
Yeah, I think he's definitely someone we can consider. I don't know if I rank him better than... definitely don't rank him better than like Smalley.
Yeah.
I would be on the fence between he and Nikolai Højgaard. So again, this is why I said I'm kind of tempted to play like a Smalley, Højgaard's, Rogers.
Oh, the Højgaard stack. Let's go.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I'd feel pretty confident that I'm not dipping down too low.
Yeah.
The main issue with that is like I think Swafford's really good. I think Haotong Li has a big case for upside. And they're like Wyndham, like I'm going to play Wyndham Clark a lot at 8,800. Yeah. So I don't want to forego the win equity that Jonathan Vegas, Joel Damon were lower on Thigala, but like you kind of get where I'm going there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think that is fair as well. Okay. Let's move down to your second mid-salary play. Who else do you like in this range?
Aaron Rye. Nailed it.
You sounded so proud. I said a 3-letter word. Get on me.
Hey man, it's my show. Rye is another one of those golfers, along with Swafford, to finish or to rank in the 80th percentile or better in both of the ball striking stats over the past year. The form, some low end results, some missed cuts, but again, you got to adjust it for this field. You got to adjust expectations for what this field is. A missed cut at the Arnold Palmer is probably equivalent to like a top 30 here. He's due for some positive putting regression as well.
Yeah. I think that Rye works as well. And like hypothetically, in a hypothetical head-to-head lineup, if I couldn't quite get back up to Højgaard, Nikolai that is, I'd be okay taking a discount with Rye at $9,900. I think that he works for that. Hypothetically, again, just putting that out there. I think that he would work for that too. I like Rye as well. My second mid-star guy is Tyler Duncan. He's not long, so I can see this being like a guy we may disagree about. And he's got a couple missed cuts to open January, but one of them was not that far off. The same thing with his cut at the Phoenix Open. Outside of that, the thing's been pretty solid for Duncan. He finished 25th at the Valspar thanks to quality all-around play. Also had a good week of approach at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. It's kind of the big thing missing from his profile, so it was encouraging to see his approach play go well. Duncan makes birdies and gains strokes despite not being all that long off the tee, and I think that makes him a good play this week at 91, despite the fact he's not a course fit. So I like Duncan. I might like Haotong Li a bit more. We talked about him already. What is your rate on Tyler Duncan at 91?
Duncan and Haotong are others to consider in my main helper on numberFire. I like what I see from Tyler Duncan. Puerto Rico, T35, T25 at Valspar as well. I think he's probably a little bit undersalaried.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's should be 10-1. I think 9,100 is a little bit low.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, like 12-1 probably.
13.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I agree. Yeah. See, we're same page, you know? Okay, let's move down to the value tier for this week. You mentioned Wyndham Clark. Thiessen is one of your favorite guys, $8,800. Any final thoughts for you on Clark as being your favorite value for this week?
Super long off the tee, good off the tee overall when you account for strokes gained. Kind of a solid putter as well. Not putting above his baseline either. So I think that he's just the best value play. And again, just one of the best golfers below 10,000, and he's not really salaried as such. So Wyndham Clark, probably one of those guys whose results bogging down at worst courses for him get bogged down, and then eventually his salary's there for a good course fit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. So I'm okay with Clark as well at $8,800. I like Chase Seifert. Seifert was here for both of the events last year. He made the cut both times, finished 18th in the spring. That's good. He's been solid but unspectacular since the start of the new PGA Tour season. He's made 4 out of 6 cuts, never finishing better than 22nd, but Seifert has also gained an approach in all 4 measured events in that time. That's not too bad. The downside with Seifert is that he's not long off the tee. He is still 37th in the field and stroking off the tee the past 50 rounds, but he's 18th in approach. So the approach play is good. That's in addition to being not terrible as a putter. So again, like Duncan, not a course fit in terms of the distance, but he does a lot of other stuff really well, and I want quality golfers. I think Seifert is that for 87. What are your thoughts on Chase Seifert for this week?
Yeah, I mean, you laid out the case for him, but one thing I will say is, and again, still new to the putting regression stuff, but I have him as a really good putter. And by I have him, the data from Fantasy National has him really good.
I was worried you're going to say that he's bound to collapse.
No, from within 15 feet, he's in the 72nd percentile over the past 50 rounds, but from outside 15 feet, 13th percentile. So he should be a positive strokes gained putting, but is losing there. So I think he's a good call out. Good job, Jim.
Hey, I'll take it. Let's just end the podcast now. Just forget the last 2 picks. But you do want to bring up the spreadsheet ruiner, Vincent Whaley himself. He is 8,000 on the button. What draws you towards him?
Pretty good long-term form, just a positive 0.08, but you'll take that. Again, if you just pull up the Data Golf True Strokes Gained query, you'll see not a whole lot of golfers above 0 for this field, which just means that they're not better than the world average golfer effectively, but he's long off the tee, not necessarily the best iron player, but a putting regression candidate, and 28th here each of the past 2 years for just 8,000.
Yeah, I think that he's one of the guys I would use if I need to bend over backwards for the Damon plus Vegas approach. I think that Whaley be the guy I would turn to there, and I'd be very okay with that. I'd probably need Whaley plus a Seifert or a Buckley or a Clark, but that's fine. I think that is okay for this week. Let's talk about Hayden Buckley, a guy I like. He is $8,600. He's been in a funk with no finishes better than 49th since the Sony Open back in mid-January. But longer-term data on Buckley is still pretty solid. He ranks 4th in the field in strokes gained off the tee over the past 50 rounds. He's also 36th in approach, and that helps him sit 31st in birdies or better gained, despite being a bad putter. Buckley, the putting has largely fueled the downspin that he's had. We should expect him to be bad there. Like, I'm not expecting him to bounce back and be like a magical putter, but maybe he'll be less hideous. He's better off the tee than most guys in the field, both due to distance and accuracy. So I'm okay with that profile at $8,600. What's your rate on Hayden Buckley for this week?
I see the case for him. I just prefer other golfers in this range. Specifically, it's going to be hard for me to get to Buckley compared to Wyndham Clark. And then also Dylan Wu at same salary. I'd rather play. So What about a Dylan Wu versus Hayden Buckley head to head?
I looked into Wu. I chose Buckley over him, but I think that Wu makes sense. So sure, I'm okay with that. I'm not against Wu, but I'm fine with that personally.
It's more a matter of there are options down here, which is why as much as I really like that 10,000 range, it's going to be hard to pass up Vegas, Damon, even Thigala, because we have options down here for once.
Porque no los dos. You can go Vegas plus the 10,000 range, kick a couple guys down there, feel pretty good about it. I'm telling you, that's the optimal approach for this week. Come to the light side. Come to Papa. Anyway, let's bring the win picks to Papa right now. Finish up here with our win picks based on the odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I already called dibs on Vegas. You cannot have him. Changing the rules right now on the fly. Vegas is 16-1. I want him. You can take him if you want, I guess, but I'll be mad at you and won't talk to you for a week.
I do think he's going to win. But for the sake of the show...
No, I was joking. You can actually take him.
I guess there is a hat on the line.
You're gonna be mad at me if he wins. You're like, oh, you joked that I couldn't take him. Oh.
Yeah, that does sound like me. Was that...
Oh.
Was that just the clip you played back?
Yeah, verbatim. It's actually you every week after the Dustin Johnson thing.
Would you like to explain the Dustin Johnson thing?
No, I don't. People have heard it before. They don't need to hear it again.
Now I just imagine you with a soundboard of all my greatest hits.
Oh, buddy, I wish. If I had an unlimited budget and cared, I would do it.
I do really think that Vegas is a good bet. I think he's undervalued, so I'm gonna have a hard time going away from him. So I'll go with Jonathan Vegas at the top, but I feel like we might be eyeing up the next guy as well. So I'll let you go first. But
are we gonna go Smalley?
Yeah.
I mean, I could go either way actually with this one. So if you want to go Smalley, I can go Patrick Rogers.
I'll do that. I was also considering Wyndham Clark.
Wait, why did I go Patrick Rogers? Just a second. I might retract this. Oh, okay, never mind. You know what? No, just kidding. Those odds are long enough. Sorry. I'm deciding here on what I want to do. All right. I don't want to do Rogers. I take that back. You can have Smalley if you want him. That's okay.
Okay.
So you've got Smalley. I am going to go with Haotong Li at 45-1.
Ooh.
Yeah. Let's change it up a little bit. I think I like what I've seen enough recently relative to this field. You said he might be in contention. He's going to win the whole thing.
45?
45.
40 or...
well, let me check, actually. I haven't seen. 45, yeah.
He's 5,001.
Yeah. Why not? Well, 5,000 unit bump? Why not? Let's do it. When he wins. Sorry, I've already crowned Johnny Vegas a champion. Maybe it'll be a playoff between Haotong Li and Johnny Vegas. Maybe that's the ultimate outcome here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go send the people off to fill out their lineups here. Any final thoughts for you on the Corales Puntacana Championship?
No, I think we covered it. And I have some match play stuff up on numberFire as well.
Oh, so if you are betting the match play, head over to numberFire, check that out to see what Brandon's numbers say for that. That is Wednesday, correct? Where that starts? Yeah.
Yes.
So if you want to do that now. Check out match play stuff. But then the Corales Puntacana will lock on Thursday over on FanDuel. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. But as always, we are jam-packed throughout this week on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Tom Vecchio has NBA and NHL DFS. Austin Swain with UFC. I've got NASCAR. A lot of good stuff. MLB, a couple weeks away. So a lot of incentive to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Goodula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for this week. Good luck to you with your DFS lineups for the Corales Puntacana. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.